Chapter 1. Raven. In the living room alone, I waited until 2 a.m. for my dad to come home before retiring to my bedroom. Though I had been expecting them for hours, the square headlights of his old car never flashed through my window. I lay down in my bed wide awake until sleep finally conquered me at 4 a.m. There was still no sign of him. No rumble of a car engine, no jingle of his keys through the many deadbolts on the door. Nothing. My dad, the worrywart, the man who thrived on structure and control, didn't come home for the first time in my entire life. I didn't have to be the genius I was to know something was very wrong. "Can you give me a ride to school?" I asked Brooke on the phone the next morning as I stared at the empty space where my dad's car usually sat. It was unlike him to leave me home alone for a few hours. The fact that I had stayed overnight by myself was definitely not something he did on purpose. "Are you serious?" she said, through a mouthful of cereal. I could barely understand her. "Your dad would never let you get in the car with me. In fact, I think you told me his exact words were, 'Absolutely not, never, don't ask again.'" "He isn't here," I said, hoping to conceal some of my fear from her. "I haven't seen him since he dropped me off at home after school yesterday." She crunched on her cereal wordlessly for a while, mulling this over. Then she finally said, "That's weird. Do you think he's okay?" "I don't know," I said honestly. I wasn't honest often, but I tried to be with Brooke, as much as I could. It was hard to tell the truth when lying came so easily to me. "I'll be there as soon as I can. Michael and Millie are riding with me today, too," she warned, knowing that would change the dynamics of everything. Millie was Brooke's 10-year-old sister. Both had been put in foster care at the beginning of the school year and lived with Michael and his parents. I groaned as I hung up. If Michael and Millie were there, I wouldn't be able to openly discuss anything with Brooke. Not my worries about my father, not about Brooke's supernatural wolf-shifting boyfriend, none of it. I needed the freedom to talk to Brooke about all of these out-of-the-ordinary things. She had still yet to convince the logical side of my brain that the wolf-shifter was real, even though I knew without a doubt that every word out of her mouth was the truth. It was weird getting ready for school without the warden there to check me. He always made sure my clothes were appropriate before leaving the house, as if I were the type of girl to hide a miniskirt in my closet and try to sneak to school in it. He bought every piece of clothing I owned. Everything in my closet was dull and sensical. If it was inappropriate, it wasn't in this house in the first place. I wore my nice but modest clothes, put my black hair in a tight bun, and cleaned my glasses before walking down the long driveway to meet my ride. I looked up at the clear blue sky, thankful it wasn't raining. The walk was long enough on a nice day like this. I timed it perfectly. Brooke pulled up on the other side of the gate right as I got there to buzz myself through with my fingerprint. As I climbed in the back seat with Millie, some of the anxiety I had about my dad disappeared and was replaced by the absolute glee of getting to ride in a car with my best friend like a normal teenager. It would have been perfect if Michael wasn't there making everything super awkward. I was at least grateful that Michael wouldn't tag along with us after we got to school. We were in most of the same classes at the academy, but it was obvious that he wasn't very fond of Brooke. If he was riding to school with her, which I had never heard of him doing before, it was because he had no other option. The ride to school would have been completely silent if it weren't for Millie. That girl knew how to diffuse any situation and could have a conversation with a tree. "I want you to teach me how to play chess," she said, nudging my arm in the back seat. For some reason, Michael got to ride shotgun. He sat stoically with his blonde bangs hanging in his eyes, staring out the window like a brooding teenager. I didn't know what his problem was with Brooke, but it apparently extended to me too. He flat out ignored me when I told him good morning. "Raven can't teach you how to play chess. You know that she isn't allowed to go anywhere besides school, and you don't ever see her there," Brooke said as she wove her brown clunker through Midnight Springs. As dirty and old as that car was, I was so freaking jealous of her that it hurt. I would have given anything to have a car I could call my own, and the freedom to drive it wherever I wanted, and a driver's license. "Duh, that's why I haven't been able to ask her until now," Millie argued. "But from what I've researched, chess seems very math-heavy. I love math. I'm awesome at it, so I think I would be good at chess too, if you could teach me how to think of it like math, that is." I loved that girl and her confidence. Since they had been living with Michael, her parents discovered that she needed glasses, and she was rocking them even better than I did. They were bright red, while I always kept my frames black to avoid standing out. I hope she kept her fierce attitude when she got to high school. It is a lot of math and calculating, I admitted, but it's more than that. You also need to know how to read people. I noticed Michael stiffen. Why? It's not poker, Millie said with her nose scrunched up. No, it's not, I agreed. I would love to play poker. Unfortunately, the school does not sanction having a poker team, and my dad put blockers on our internet. In chess, you need to be able to anticipate the kind of moves that your opponent makes, I explained. After all, both sides always start out with the same basic options. In the first few moves, you can make moves to see how they react, then adapt your game to beat their playing style. Millie's eyes widened. See? That's why I need you as my coach. If I could learn to beat you, I could beat anyone. You couldn't beat me, I said with a smile. I know too much about you already. Fine, don't coach me, Millie said, crossing her arms and leaning back against the seat. I'll work my butt off to learn how to beat you the first time I play you. We'll see what you have to say then. I smiled. I like your confidence, kid. Someday you might be able to. I doubted it, but I could tell she was determined, and I respected it. I didn't doubt she could beat anyone else on the planet, besides myself. As we pulled into the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of a police car parked next to the sidewalk. It looked out of place next to all of the teenagers' cars at the academy. Why is Nash getting a ride from his dad today? Brooke wondered aloud as she looked for an open space. You never see the sheriff here on campus. Let me out here, I said. I quickly unbuckled and got out as soon as she put it in park and raced over to the sheriff's car. I knocked on the driver's side window, causing the sheriff to jump. His right hand went to his side for his gun, then relaxed when he saw it was me and rolled down his window. Apparently he could tell I wasn't a threat as soon as he laid eyes on me. His face went from anxious to irritated in a nanosecond. I hadn't seen the sheriff on many occasions over the years, but I'd heard some pretty awful things about the man. Some even from my own father. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to startle you, but I have a quick question, I said, suddenly aware that my mouth was very dry. If I wasn't so worried about my dad, I would have walked away and waited to ask someone who looked a little more helpful. His scowl made me want to run for the hills. Yes? He asked. His voice was annoyed and clipped, and so were his eyes. He did not want to be a part of this conversation any more than I did. How do I report a missing person? I asked, adjusting my glasses to give my hands something to do. It was finally beginning to cool down outside from the heat of summer, but my hands were still sweating. At the police station, not in the academy parking lot, he snapped. How long has the person been missing? Since around 4 p.m. yesterday, I explained. It's my dad. He never came home last night. He groaned and rolled his eyes. Seriously? You're making a big deal out of this when he hasn't even been missing for 24 hours yet? He's a grown man. He doesn't have to report home every single night. He put the car in gear, trying to end our conversation before I was done. I put my hand on the door like I could hold him back if he were to gun it across the parking lot. But this has never happened before, I argued. He always comes home. If you report him now and he shows up within the next hour or so, you would have wasted the force's time, he said, interrupting me. As you are doing right now. Come by the sheriff's department if he still isn't home when you get there after school. I removed my hand and stepped back right before he tore out of the parking lot. His tires squealed like there was a fire he needed to get to. Since he was the sheriff, there may have been a fire or something equally important that he had to go do. But he didn't have to be such a jerk about it. My dad was missing. I was really worried, and he didn't even care. He treated me like I was a door-to-door salesman trying to make him buy something, not a civilian with an issue. Across the empty space where the car was moments before, Nash stood staring at me. His eyes apologized for the awkwardness of my encounter with his father, but he said nothing. He lowered his head, blonde mohawk pointing the way, and walked on. His absence left me standing alone like an idiot, speechless and confused. A car honked at me to get out of the way, and I glanced up to see Elliot Mueller behind the wheel. I rushed to the sidewalk to clear the way, certain that he would run me over if he was in a bad enough mood. He would probably run anyone over. I'd heard he dealt drugs, and the person who said it wasn't lying about it, because I know when people are lying. If someone was willing to deal drugs, they were probably willing to mow someone over with their car if they got in their way. It seemed like a logical jump to me. It was strange how school continued to go on like normal when everything in my life had turned upside down. I was so worried, yet I was expected to go about my day and do my homework like a good student. It was ridiculous. I weaved through the crowd to my locker, hearing bits and pieces about the lives of my classmates and storing it away in my mind for later. Without much else to do in my downtime, I treated the students here like my own social experiment. I learned everything I could about them and observed how they reacted to different situations. I probably knew each of them better than they knew themselves. It occurred to me more than once that having a hobby like that would be pretty creepy if I had a motive. As it was kind of strange and pathetic. I shook my head, unable to even focus on the students' drama when I was so concerned about my dad. I felt like I should be out on foot searching for him, but if the sheriff wasn't worried, did I need to be? Would he be in the parking lot to pick me up at 3 o'clock like he always was? Was this all some kind of fluke? Would everything go back to normal soon? I don't know if I have time to take you home and then to see Sheriff Williams after school, Brooke said as I filled her in before French class started. I have to get Peter to the courthouse by 4, and it's not like he can ride with anyone else. You're welcome to come with us, though, and I'll bring you by right after I drop him off. It's not like I have to go in with him. Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out, I said, though I didn't know how. I'd never had the freedom to have to figure out anything on my own before. Is everything getting finalized today? She nodded. Her boyfriend, Peter, the wolf shifter, had inherited the entire estate of a mutual friend of theirs who had passed away. Peter had spent most of his life isolated in the woods and therefore didn't know how to drive, so he gave the old man's car to Brooke. That's good. I'm glad everything is finally coming together, I said. I knew it had been hard for them to prove that Peter was the one who was supposed to inherit everything. Things still going okay at Michael's? She winced. Can we not call it that? It's the Stevens. And yes, Ryan and Amber are fantastic. My only complaint is that I wish I had fewer rules. I'm not used to someone telling me when to be home and what I can and can't do. It's especially hard now that I have a boyfriend. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, sounds rough. I'm sure you feel suffocated. She kind of giggled as she no doubt remembered what a tight leash I was on. You're right, it's not that bad. I can tell they're only doing it because they really care about us. I trust them. I might be jumping the gun here, but I think I may even be able to leave Millie with them and go to college. My eyes widened as hope filled my chest. I had always wanted us to go to college together. You trust them with Millie? That's huge. She nodded. It is. I really think they're good people. The problem is that they have such a volatile relationship with Michael. It's so disorienting. I don't know what to do about him, and I don't think they do either. Her voice had dropped to a whisper so no one could overhear us, even though Michael wasn't in French class with us. What do you mean? I whispered back. I was hungry for more information about Michael. He was new, so I hadn't had the opportunity to study him like I had my other classmates. And he was very hard to read. He didn't interact with anyone much, besides some of the guys on the basketball team. She groaned as if trying to find the words. He's very moody and emotional with them, and they don't seem to take it well either. It's more than average teenage moodiness. He's very withdrawn and angry. Anytime they do something good to him, he acts out with anger and punishes them for it. If they make a mistake, he magnifies it by 100 and rubs it in their face. I want to scream at him sometimes. He has no idea how good he has it with parents like his. Do you think he's upset about you and Millie living there? I asked, trying to grasp reasons why he would be acting like that. I wanted to understand him and how his mind worked. Or do you think he was acting like that with them before you were ever in the picture? She shrugged. I'm not sure. He's sweet to Millie, though. If she asks him a question, he always responds in the nicest way he can. But even she tries her best to rein in her question so she doesn't push it. I feel like we all avoid him as much as we can, and he feels the same way about us. I don't know if Millie and I are the problem or not. I'd like for you to ask him and see what he says, she said, knowing the uncanny ability I had for being able to tell if people were telling the truth. Or not. You only like me because I'm a human lie detector test, I joked. I knew it wasn't true, but she did value that about me. She hated that she couldn't lie to me, but she'd gotten pretty good at hiding the truth without lying. She'd done a lot of that this past summer. She smiled. That, and you're a pretty great friend. I'm lucky to have you, Raven. I returned her smile, letting her know I also returned the sentiment. I knew Brooke would walk through fire to keep me from getting burned. Every girl in the world deserved a best friend as good as Brooke. Miss Dubois came in, tapping a black pointer on the palm of her left hand. A hush fell over the class as we held our breath and prayed she wouldn't single us out. Bonjour, parlez-vous français? She asked. slapping the pointer in front of Nash, who recoiled. We were all relieved, but felt incredibly sorry for him at the same time. No, Nash replied. He had a small blonde goatee to match his mohawk. Actually, it had flecks of red in it. That was peculiar. There wasn't even a hint of red on his head. That's quite right, young man, she said with a satisfied frown. Let's see what we can do about that, shall we?